But moving forward, one of our next categories in our spectrum is guided practice. So let's take a look at what that is. So with guided practice, this is where the students are practicing something that is a new skill that they're trying to acquire. And while they're practicing it, they're being led by their teacher, who might be demonstrating how to do it. Perhaps they're at the chalkboard or whiteboard, or they're using a flipboard or something. And the teacher is also explaining and going around and seeing what the students are doing and evaluating their work. So guided practice, the students are working hands-on, but the teacher is very much engaged in working with those students while they're doing that. Next up on our list is group work. You all should be very familiar with group work. If not, do know that you do a good bit of group work in the College of Education here at OU. It helps you learn how to collaborate with one another, which is an essential skill if you're going to be in education. So the purpose of group work should be that all members of the group need to work together to accomplish some sort of specific goal. The task should be something that should be large enough that you really can't do it on your own. There, you really do need a group. Here's some examples, and I've just found these in different spots on social media. On social media, I am connected to a variety of sites from different schools as well as different teacher groups. So here you can see a social studies project in progress, and you can see the students look very actively engaged, working with one another. So here's a question: what do students need to understand to be successful with group work? We saw what they needed for a discussion. What do they need to be good at their group work? So I think this meme over here, it really cracks me up, and it's so on point that in groups you do tend to see some of these categories: the one person that does most of the work, people who disappear, and so on. For groups to be successful, you've got to work together. You need to learn certain things like cooperative work, how to, again, pull your brains together, pull your hard work together so you're all working towards the same goal, to communicate with one another, to share your ideas even when you're disagreeing with one another, and how to divide work up. Division of labor and delegating is also very important. Moving down the line, we have role play and simulation. So when it comes to role plays, students are going to be acting out the part of something to either see things from a different perspective, put themselves in someone else's shoes, engage in a particular scenario. And one of the things that happens here is that students are learning how to act in what might be an unknown situation to them. They're getting to pretend in some ways to hopefully learn something. So for instance, in elementary schools, it's very common to bring in a firefighter and to have the students practice stop, drop, and roll of what you would do if you were in a fire. So they are pretending in a situation that is unknown to them to learn what they would do if that situation were to occur. This type of scenario, a role play or a simulation, can also help you learn empathy for a group of people that maybe you are not directly connected to in your real life. You might recall in this class we had an activity where you did an online simulation, a game called Spent, to help you see things from the perspective of someone who might be living in poverty. That was the purpose of that, to not only create empathy, but also help you put yourself in someone else's shoes. And sometimes they can be very emotionally charged. I'm going to be showing you a video on this next slide. And it's a longer video than I usually play, but I do believe that it is worth it. It goes through a very impactful as well as historically important role play that was tested by a teacher. And the focus of it was looking at racial discrimination.
This is a special week. Does anybody know what it is?
National Brotherhood.
National Brotherhood Week. What's brotherhood? Treat everyone as though he was your brother. And is there anyone in this United States that we do not treat as our brothers?
Yes.
Who?
Yeah.
The black people. Who else?
Indians.
Absolutely, the Indians. Many places in the United States. How are black people treated? How are Indians treated? How are people who are of a different color than we are treated?
They don't get anything in this world.
Why is that?
Because they're different color.
You think you know how I would feel to be judged by the color of your skin? I don't. Do you think you do? No, I don't think you'd know how that felt unless you had been through it, would you? It might be interesting to judge people today by the color of their eyes. Would you like to try this?
Yeah.
Sounds like fun, doesn't it? Since I'm the teacher and I have blue eyes, I think maybe the blue-eyed people should be on top the first day. I mean, the blue-eyed people are the better people in this room. Oh, yes, they are.
Yeah.
Blue-eyed people are smarter than brown-eyed people. This is a fact. The brown-eyed people do not get to use the drinking fountain. You'll have to use the paper cups. You brown-eyed people are not to play with the blue-eyed people on the playground. Well, the brown-eyed people in this room today are going to wear collars so that we can tell from a distance what color your eyes are. You ready, Laurie?
Brown-eyed.
She's a brown-eyed. You'll begin to notice today that we spend a great deal of time waiting for brown-eyed people. I don't see the yardstick, do you?
It's probably over there. Hey, Mrs. Lake, you better keep that on your desk when the brown-eyed people get out of hand.
Oh, you think if the brown-eyed people get out of hand, that would be the thing to use? Who goes first to lunch?
Blue-eyed.
The blue-eyed people. Blue-eyed people may go back for seconds. Brown-eyed people do not.
Brown-eyed.
Don't you know?
Oh, they're not smart. And it seemed like when we were down on the bottom, everything bad was happening to us.
The way they treated you, you felt like you didn't even want to try to do anything. It seemed like Mrs. Elliott was taking our best friends away from us.
What happened at recess? Were two of you boys fighting?
Russell called me names and I came in the gut.
What did he call you?
Brown eyes. They always call us that.
Yeah, they keep calling us brown eyes.
What's wrong with being called brown-eyed?
It means that we're stupider.
I watched what had been marvelous, cooperative, wonderful, thoughtful children turn into nasty, vicious, discriminating little third graders in a space of 15 minutes. Yesterday, I told you that brown-eyed people aren't as good as blue-eyed people. That wasn't true. I lied to you yesterday. The truth is that brown-eyed people are better than blue-eyed people. Russell, where are your glasses?
I forgot them.
You forgot them. And what color are your eyes?
Blue.
Susan Ginder has brown eyes. She didn't forget her glasses. Russell Ring has blue eyes, and what about his glasses? He forgot them.
I think you can see where this is going, and if you'd like to learn more about it, all you need to do is do a search online for the brown-eyed, blue-eyed simulation. This woman has gone on to do lots of different studies and research on discrimination, and she's been a guest on a variety of TV shows, including Oprah. But you can see how emotionally charged this was, and she did carry this forward and do even more with it, but for the sake of time, I just wanted to show you a snippet of it. So that's role play simulation. Our last one is reflective learning inquiry. So this is where students are going to be really learning on their own, discovering information through active exploration. One easy way of seeing an example of this that you might relate to as college students are research papers, where you're given a topic. You have to go and find primary sources, you have to find research, you have to compile information and synthesize it and then write a report about it and come up with your own thoughts. That's similar to reflective learning inquiry. It often begins with some sort of a problem you might solve. So this can also be used in science courses. But it's not considered inquiry if you already know what the result is that you're supposed to get. So in a science class, if the teacher runs an experiment from beginning to end and shows it to you, and then you go back and duplicate it, that's not inquiry. It's not inquiry if the questions and steps are predetermined and told to you, and you're said, given a list, do steps 1 through 5, and here you go. And it's not inquiry if it's a demonstration. Inquiry is where the student is on their own exploring information and coming up with their own answers. Often students have to even develop a hypothesis, discover data, and use that data as evidence to support their ideas of what the solution could be to their hypothesis. So let's move forward and take a look at a couple of other ways that you can look at teaching strategies. One is something that we call a constructivist approach to teaching. If you move forward in the College of Ed, you would take the sophomore block of education courses, and one of the things we would be talking about there is understanding constructivism. The idea that students learn by actively engaging in the material, creating their own understandings, interpreting information for themselves, and that we all do this in a way that is unique to us. I like the quote here to the side, knowledge is constructed, not transferred. So it's the idea that although we might watch the same video, we might hear the same lecture, each one of us would have slightly different understandings because we're all unique and we all interpret information differently. Can you think of a time that you have interpreted an event different from someone else? That two of you have been watching or listening or hearing the same thing, but you walked away with different understandings. It's actually quite common. You might recall there was a viral phenomena a year or so ago online, the idea of what color is this dress? And different people saw the dress very differently based upon their own expectations, perhaps also based upon their monitor, based upon perhaps the background color. That is kind of that same idea of constructivism. We all create our own understandings because we all have unique situations. Also, activity learning, the idea that students really learn well and develop a sound understanding of concepts by engaging in related activities, by doing hands-on work. I love this quote down below. I hear and I forget. I see and I remember. I do and I understand. We do a lot of this in schools. So here's Columbus City Schools, where they got their elementary students digging in the dirt, creating a school garden, learning about how to plant seeds, how to harvest crops, how to understand the value of good eating, and related to all kinds of activities ranging from nutrition, math, science, and even language arts. Here's another one where at Columbus City Schools where they had students playing with straws and Play-Doh, and then before they know it, the students are, creating geometric shapes, which relates to math. Here's from a school that my daughter attended in preschool, and you can see that they spent the day doing early American kinds of activities like candle making and fried bread and had a Thanksgiving feast and made Indian headdresses and all these sorts of things to better understand history. Something else that I think is important to point out is the idea that you're not expected to simply follow one teaching strategy or one approach. Teachers are most successful when they use a variety of approaches. Same thing with theories, when you believe in a variety of learning theories. So, for instance, although I do a lot of these videos, especially right now while we're teaching online, and that is lecture, I also incorporate questioning in the way that you can online. I also try to incorporate visual learning. We're also doing hands-on homeworks where you're having to do learning on your own to discover information. We're doing some interactive things where you're interacting with others. So you really have to incorporate more than just one strategy in your course. One of the last things we're going to be looking at is what makes teaching strategies work. One of the biggies is planning. There is so much planning that goes along with teaching, and your planning really needs to be very detailed. It has to be thorough so that you can really look at it, even a year later and understand what it is you're wanting to do, and what we call doable. I like this little thing I found online. It said a good lesson plan is a living document, not set in stone, but a guide that keeps you engaged in thinking about what you're teaching. You also need to prepare your students to learn. Before you jump into a lesson, you want to think about things like attention-getting activities. What can you do at the beginning and during your lesson to keep and maintain your students' attention? Another great quote, a teacher who is attempting to teach without inspiring the student with a desire to learn is hammering on a cold iron. So what can you do to keep their attention? And I thought this one was also a good one from our text, the idea of bracketing information or taking a moment to go, okay, where was I? Where did we pick up? To make sure that you're reviewing information that you've covered and summarizing things at the end that you are. Pardon me, I had to pause because I had to sneeze. So where was I? So that idea to make sure that you are bridging that gap between what did you cover yesterday and what are you going to be covering today. And that you're doing things like sponges. And what we mean by sponges are reviews. So reviewing what you've just covered, or a way of extending the information that you have covered into more ways to get the students to elaborate on the information. And there are all sorts of great resources you can find online with sponge activities based upon your grade level and your subject area. So that is it. And again, this is your last chapter for EDTE 1000. Thank you all so much. You have been so terrific. I really appreciate how hard you all have been working this semester. So thank you.